parents made me go to college, and I went to college. I applied to one college because that's how much I was into it and I cared. I applied to one college. I got in. I chose English as a major because I know the language and I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. So I went to college and I got pretty good grades while I had all the fun stuff happen too. And then I left college and then did other things without my degree, like bartending and singing in bands and doing all of that stuff. And then eventually I was like, I should like do something with it. So I applied to be a newspaper reporter at my hometown newspaper, went back home after being gone for years, actually got hired to be a sports reporter. Ooh. I know nothing about sports.
Wow,
at all.
I didn't know that.
So I ended up writing features and doing the community beat. And at the time, the beat was fracking. Fracking was just coming into our region.
What year are we talking?
So this is 2010.
2010?
2010. Yeah, I go to college, go away, come back home, and get my first newspaper job, my only newspaper job, in 2010, and I start covering fracking. I go way more in depth and cover it in a manner that is not admired or tolerated by the publisher, who seems to have friends in the oil and gas industry. And so they terminated my position. And I used that opportunity. And right around that time, I had met Josh, and I'll let him tell that part of the story. So I lost my job at the newspaper right when I met Josh. And so it was this perfect opportunity to do something else, which became way better, which is the investigative news nonprofit that is Public Herald, where I could publish the truth about what was going on, because that's not what the newspaper wanted to publish. I didn't know anything about fracking when I started that job and when I moved back home. And honestly, one of the first things I did was I looked at the community events calendar in town, and I saw that there was a lecture being televised by Dr. Tony Ingraffia at Cornell University. And he just gave the lowdown on what fracking was and the problems that had already created out west and in Canada. And I was just like, holy crap, this is real bad. This is real bad. And everybody here thinks it's awesome because it's gonna save the family farm, and it's gonna give our community the economic boost that it needs after other industries failed.
Jobs.
This was the jobs argument. And I mean, literally at the newspaper was just publishing oil and gas company press releases. Just like taking it out of the email and putting it in the newspaper, like not fact checking anything. We were like a PR rag for the industry.
Wow.
And so once I saw that lecture by Dr. Ingraffia, I just jumped in and I started digging and fell into my new self, which, I had never intended to become, but I became this like voracious researcher and like surveyor of the truths around this. And I started studying economics for the first time, like the whole boom and bust economic cycle and how this capitalist system is really actually is, that's a fundamental part of our capitalist system, is the boom and bust, which is just this cycle of extracting everything you can and then like letting something collapse, and extracting everything you can and then letting it collapse. But now, of course, we've gotten to the point where it's the whole fucking living planet that's doing, we've done that too.
I mean, my background in school was literature, and I also had a background in environmental science and biology. And philosophy, but the experiences that I had in environmental science were really bad. You could see the red flags that were being taught in the schools.
Give me some examples.
The birdhouse example is my favorite one. We were building bluebird boxes for environmental science, This is like
Yeah.
first like couple weeks in environmental science. And the teacher's like, we're going to go build these bluebird boxes and we're going to bring this person in and they're going to tell us why this is important and what we're doing. And she comes in and says, we're going to go out into these fields and bluebirds have no place to nest. And we're going to build these boxes for them so the invasive birds can't come in and destroy their nests and all these things. And that's going to be part of your initiation into, environmental conservation and planning and policy and all this good stuff. And I thought, what the fuck is going on? Why aren't we rebuilding the habitat? Why are we building bird boxes? Bird boxes was the answer to rebuilding habitat. I was appalled.
Just shelter in place, bluebirds.
It was like,
we got you.
I was having like this like freak out moment of like literally it felt like we were taking the indigenous cultures and putting them on reservations in boxes, So I basically said that. I'm like, aren't we just essentially redoing what we did as colonizers when we came here? And the person who was speaking shut down. They were like, I have nothing else to say. I don't know what happened, but they forgot the rest of their speech and the whole class ended after like 10 minutes.
Ooh. What year were you in?
The class thought I was like the
Shut
greatest.
it down.
I was like the greatest thing ever. Right? They were like, Josh, remember when you shut down that class one day? And I was like, yeah, it sucked. And the best part was the person came back to the school, Bowling Green at the time, at the end of that semester to give another speech about the metro parks. And the teacher pulled me out before the class started and said, Josh, I had to ask you not to talk. I said, you want to censor me before this class? And she was like,
in college, being censored in college.
Yeah, I'm just asking you, not to ask any questions about it. And I thought, whatever. So I didn't. But that was one of my initial bad experiences with environmental science. I think the other big one, of course, is the fact that the one size fits all plan, coming from the federal level policy, applying it to watersheds across the country as if every watershed is the same thing, rather than designing plans specifically for the ecosystems that exist there. And that was a senior level course in environmental science for comprehensive planning. And then comprehensive planning was the other really bad experience where the class was taking you to essentially new shopping mall centers, new urbanistic settings, which are the quote unquote donut economies that the new age economists are morphing into this new economic theory. And the idea is that, you encapsulate commerce into an area that was previously, being used for farming next to a major highway. And there's apartments surrounding it and shops and everything you need in the middle. And then the people live there and shop there and they do everything. And I'm like, this is called a downtown. Like, what
Right.
the hell?
We have this already.
Doing? You guys are literally leaving the downtown empty. Okay. And you're going to build this fucking new urbanistic shopping mall center. I was like, I had come from a family of local businesses and you're the reason that we have problems. I'm like, this is so screwed up. Melissa took me to well pads in Pennsylvania. And when I saw it firsthand, I had a background in basically analyzing these post-industrial pollution sites like brownfields and superfunds because I worked with an environmental firm, and those scientists taught me how to dig through files, how to do soil samples, water samples, read lab analysis. And I said, Melissa, we got to go get these documents where this stuff is at and see what these companies are doing. And that's how Public Herald got going, when we started to do the research and figure out that there was a much bigger story here. And the story was that the state regulators were suppressing water contamination. Not only did they not want to give us those records, but when we did actually look at those records, then it became clear that their conclusions and their analysis of water contamination cases were not based on science. They were based on politics, or they were just completely hidden. So they would just hide specific problems of water contamination from the complainant and put them in harm's way. And that work, which was a 7-year project between Triple Divide and Public Herald and the big report we did in 2017, that was then handed off to the Attorney General's office as evidence of criminal acts by both the industry and the state, and is partly responsible for the ongoing criminal investigation happening right now. So I'd love to share that with that Bluebird teacher. She thought about it. Yeah. She was actually really cool. I feel bad for her. But the presentation the Metro Parks gave was pretty whack.
So when you both first approached for these records, did you approach as public citizens, or did you have, this publication, Public Herald, at that point? Like, this is something that citizens can ask for, right? Or is there some special process to get these records?
They're public records. Anybody can ask for them.
Right. So why were you getting friction there when you asked? No one asked before? No one cared and they were annoyed?
Yeah, no one had asked for those records. So when Melissa and I were talking, I said, we need to see the complaint records. We need to see the records where people called in and there was an investigation done. And when we asked for those, the state said, oh, you can't have those. And we were like, well, what are you talking about? We can't have.
What was the reason?
Complaint records. This is like 2011, 12. Mm-hmm. And then Melissa could tell you one of the reasons, because she got the scoop from one of the lawyers.
Yeah, one of the regulators, one of the agency. So the agency we're talking about is the Department of Environmental Protection in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And one of their attorneys, when I pushed back against them not wanting to give those complaints, one of their attorneys called and said, we need to keep these confidential. And I was like, confidential? You can just redact people's personal information and then give us the rest. And the attorney said, well, they've been declared confidential. And I said, by whom? And he said, by Scott Perry. And Scott Perry is the head of oil and gas, everything oil and gas at the Department of Environmental Protection. And he's a bit of a character in some of our work and in real life. But anyway, when I asked the attorney, well, why did Mr. Perry determine that they are confidential? And the attorney said, because he doesn't want them to cause alarm.
Yeah, if you say Scott Perry like 3 times
sets
fast,
off alarm bells.
He appears like Beetlejuice.
Joshua and I go, oh, we're going to get all those files.
Yeah.
We're going to do.
So just don't stir things up. Just what's the problem? Just leave things the way they are. Why are you asking this? Why do you care?
Yeah, Scranton Times-Tribune.
Okay.
And Laura Laguerre was asking for a part of that record. And that the part of the record was DEP's determination. And that letter is like a 10% portion of the actual complaint file, right? Because the complaint file is a much bigger file.
Yeah,
we were looking for the complaint file,
not what the citizen actually said. Okay. We wanted what the citizen said, and Laura was going after the DEP's decision about what they said. Anyway,
so when the Scranton Times-Tribune won the lawsuit to access that part of the record, the determination, I wrote an email to DEP. I said, listen, this lawsuit indicates that this entire record is now public and you need to release it to us for these specific townships. And they were like, okay, Josh, we'll do it. And they're like, yeah.
So
they're like, damn, they released it. And then we spent the next 3 years scanning those records for all of their counties that they held within the Williamsport DEP office. And from Williamsport, we went to Meadville and got all theirs. And from Meadville, we went to Pittsburgh and got all of theirs. Mm-hmm. We did this because, number one, it's the most important document in DEP's catalog when it comes to fracking. There is no document that details the systemic impact of fracking more so than the complaint record. And in Meadville, a whistleblower slipped us a document after we were asking, like, why aren't we seeing this specific complaint, or why aren't we seeing more details about this? And the document said that they shredded these complaint records after 5 years if they determined it to be, a non-entity. And that would mean anything that the state said wasn't
they determine.
Yeah. And the state was determining, like, I don't know, it was like 94% of the records weren't valid, weren't water contamination. You imagine that? Like 1,000 people call with water contamination complaints, and the state says 94% of you are wrong. Your water that you've been drinking your whole life that changed and now stinks and now says harms you. It's always been that way, and you're wrong.
Notice that.
And we're going to shred your record after 5 years so nobody else can come and review your file.
So is that why so hearing that information, did that create, I would imagine, like more of a sense of urgency of like, okay, we need to get as much as we can before more of it is shredded and see what's here, kind of a thing?
Yeah. I mean, we had people from, the people who are like doing tree sits right now, all across the country, were inside of the file room saying, this is really important. We need to scan this record. Like, that's how significant they felt it was, and we felt it was. And we had an awesome team of people who donated a lot of their time to Public Herald to get those records out. And I want to respect and, say thank you to all of them who did that. That's
a lot of work. That's a lot of effort and a lot of time. So how many people do you think helped you over the course of those years with going through that?
At least a dozen.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And then, some of them, Melissa and I did the national tour of Triple Divide in 2014. And two of them, with some other ones, continued our file reviews every week for like the 5 months we were gone.
Wow. That's awesome.
And they scanned those records for us every Monday.
Wow. Cinema Activist is produced by Lions Den Productions. Hosted by John C. Lyons. Music by Tony Gray. Support the efforts of Lions Den Productions by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Lions Den Productions. Thank you for listening. We'll be back soon.